Morning everybody, Phil Henry here from Capricornia Chamber of Commerce. As we've been foreshadowing for the last couple of weeks, we're going to be doing interviews with the candidates for the forthcoming state election for the seats of Rockhampton and Keppel. We've reached out to the candidates, and those interviews that we'll be posting are from those candidates who have got back to us and agreed to do the interview. Each of those candidates will have been given their questions a day in advance. There are 6 questions and they get 2 minutes to answer, and we'll be giving them a little bit of a nod as they're coming to the end of their time. They'll also get a minute at the end just to do a wrap up if they want to do. So without further ado, on to the candidates. Morning everybody. This morning we're talking to Torin O'Brien. Torin's the One Nation candidate for the seat of Rockhampton. Thanks for joining us, Torin.
Yeah, Phil.
Ready to go with the questions?
Absolutely.
Terrific. Well, the first one, it's become traditional for parties to identify their priorities for the first 100 days in office. What are your priorities for your first 100 days?
Yeah, I think the biggest issue we've got here is youth crime, and although our full 18 points of policies take longer than 100 days to implement, I will be able to start immediate youth training programs here. We need more and we need them to be longer, and that's something I have the ability to do through my gym and other gyms, so that's something we'll kick off straight away. We also have the issue of the Gracemere High School, and I think the best protocol for me would be head down to Calliope. They've got principals, planners and everyone involved in a school that I'd like to mimic. They've started with just the first couple of years and they're building on it from there. So I'd like to speak to the people on the ground about how they got that off, what it costs, those types of things. Look, we've got some roads that really need to be attended to here. They're appalling. I feel like it's been roadworks between here and Gladstone forever. So maybe we can have a look into why that's taken so long and what's going on there. Look, outside of this, there's some new problems that have popped up, and extreme violence in our schools is certainly one of them. It's something I've put a focus on ever since realising how bad it is. So the experts in Amadi and Bullyproof Australia, I had them in here last week in a Jeff Horn. I'd like to make sure that they're implemented in our 3 large state high schools here. That can also have a great effect with our youth crime issue too, because we're teaching them to be better, more resilient leaders rather than rat bags, basically. Look, one of the things I've found lately, Phil, is that a lot of people have been ignored with their problems. So I'd like to immediately make a 8:30 talk with Torin every morning. Anyone with the public can come in. I'll make them a coffee. We can chat about what their issue is and how we can attack it, come up with a plan. So there's certainly a range of things I want to put in the first 100 days, and those are all at the top of that pile.
Okay, thanks very much, Torin. Next one I will read out if you don't mind. As identified by Chamber of Commerce and Industry Queensland and the Capricornia Chamber, a business-friendly environment is a key prerequisite for a healthy small business economy. One major concern for regional businesses is the number of institutional barriers that are in place that prevent local businesses from being given fair and equitable access to major projects. Many government departments have both published regulations, but of more concern, opaque and discretionary decision-making processes that basically act as barriers against local firms. So given the big number of construction and infrastructure projects on the go in this region, what would you do to fix that problem?
Well, it's a good question. It's a hard one to fix. I feel like we need to certainly streamline the tender process. I've spoken to a number of people about this, and it can cost up $50,000 to $100,000 just to apply for it. I mean, they're effectively making locals campaign for the privilege to have a job in their own town. So we definitely need to bring in a group of experts to see how we can streamline this. How can we lower the costs? I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't know many small businesses that can afford to throw 50 or 100 grand out the window and maybe not even get the job. So a good example is, the Capricorn Correctional Centre upgrades. We've spoken to people that are doing the electrical work out there, and they're from the Gold Coast. So all that money and those jobs they're saying have been created, yes, there are jobs, but they're not our jobs, they're Gold Coast jobs, and the money's going back there. So although it's a very complex question, and I wouldn't be afraid to bring in people that know more than I about the situation, we certainly need to work on streamlining that, lowering the cost and having a local first approach, because at the moment we're effectively forcing the jobs into bigger, more well-off corporations outside of our locals. So keeping with the local first act I want to push, that's where I would start, is attempting to streamline the process.
Okay, thanks, Torin. Just leading on from that question, talking about infrastructure, what are your infrastructure priorities for this region?
Well, look, we touched on it in the first question. Actually, the roads here are appalling, and why that's taken so long, I don't know. So we certainly need to speed that up, particularly around the outskirts of Rockhampton region. They're getting out of control. The Gracemere High School, again, I know we just talked about that, but the way we want to do that, we've created the first year initially and then building on it each year after, that locks in several years of contract work, which we want to make sure goes to locals. So there's some good infrastructure projects there. We know that where we're sitting right now, Rocky Sports Club, that's going to have a stadium built here. Now, that was a pre-election campaign promise for me. Unfortunately, our hard-working senator is so good that they've already got that over the line. So what I can do to support that and see that the work goes to locals, which you know it already will because of the builders they've appointed, that's a great job as well. So outside of this, power is an enormous issue for us. We've got really high power prices, and I don't see why we can't work on building on Cabra and also working on utilising all our coal royalties here and bringing more offices to Rockhampton. All the offices that run various mining corporations, unions, whatnot, they're all in Brisbane, but the coal's all up here. So what can we do to help bring those jobs back to the region where they belong?
Talking about power, the availability of sufficient affordable baseload power while reducing net emissions from energy sources is a key component of economic sustainability. So what's your view of this objective and how would you achieve it?
Well, I need to be more pro-coal for a start. So the high energy, low emissions coal-fired power stations, they need to be front and centre. I've just read today the $2.5 billion rescue package for South Australia's renewable energies crisis, effectively a power cord that's going to run through to the national power grid. Now, when Victoria struggles, they can tap into New South Wales. When New South Wales struggles, where do they tap into? Queensland. And where do we get our power from? Coal. So you can, as much as I'd love the world to be able to run on renewables right now, we're simply not there yet with the technology, and we certainly don't want to see a repeat of what's happened in South Australia. The legalised cannabis party had quite an outrageous suggestion that they would retrofit our coal-fired power stations to run on hemp. That won't happen, and neither will any other nonsense, anti-coal nonsense, under my watch. So yes, we need to extend on coal-fired power stations we have and also build more. We know that in Claremont that was bought by the French. They effectively shut it down and turned it into renewables. We're just not ready yet. Yes, I'd love the idea, but we're not ready yet, and we need to put more focus on high energy, low emission coal-fired power stations. There's clubs right here in Rockhampton that pay $20,000 a month just to turn the lights on. Why this has gone this far, I don't know, but it's something that I won't be silent about.
Thanks, Torin. Next question. It's become apparent in recent years that the education and skills system, but particularly apprenticeships, hasn't kept pace with the needs of business and industry. So what would you do to rectify that situation in this region?
Well, look, there's something that's actually affected me, or sort of affected me personally, and that's when they shut down the TAFE and Emerald here. So we've got an issue here with the local meatworks. Then we all know that they very much favour those 457 workers. Now, why can't we have these types of TAFE, like the agricultural TAFE and Emerald that was shut down, to help reskill workers that's going to give them jobs here? Now, there's no reason why we can't do that. We're bringing in all these 457s, well, maybe not at the moment, and the meatworks actually struggling because they can't get those in. But we certainly need to be making the apprenticeships TAFEs more easily accessible to our people to get them into jobs. And the meatworks is a prime example of that. It's not that hard to get up to speed in a TAFE to like a 6-week short course to get a job like that, but we simply just don't have the facility. And the last one that was shut down was that one in Emerald. So we need to get on board with these things, growing them, make them easily available for all our youth, especially for our youth.
Okay, last question, Torin. Particularly since the onset of COVID-19, but also reflecting, I guess, changes in the global marketplace, businesses need to better understand the digital world, but also have access to stable, high-speed internet. So what are your policies to help local businesses get more online and understand what they need to do, but also have access to good, stable, high-speed internet? Yeah,
so this is one that I wish there was a group that already existed to help people with this, and I say that because we've all suffered the lockdown recently. My business should have been locked down and closed for that period, like every other gym owner, but I was able to take my gym classes online. Now, the first month of those online trainings were a disaster. Why? Because I don't know how to do it, and we had to figure it out slowly with a lot of hiccups. Now, if there was groups involved that could assist those businesses going into the digital world, like mine, it would have been a lot smoother process. We would have lost a lot less money, and everyone would have been a lot more happy. So we definitely need to start with creating an organisation that is going to assist those people, especially the older businesses and the older people that aren't so tech savvy. It's very important that we put that support there behind those businesses. And once again, this affected me personally with my business, and I wish that was there. So high-speed internet, look, we've fallen behind. We know that NBN was a bit of an issue, so that certainly needs to be rectified and have some real experts look at the problem.
Okay, so that's the end of the set questions, Torin. We'd like to give you another minute just to do a summary of yourself, your objectives, your priorities, and what's driving you for this election, please.
Sure. What's driving me is very much falls into my priorities. I feel like the last couple of terms, there's not been a lot of transparency. We can talk about the issues around, jobs that are meant to be local going out of town, projects that haven't been kicked off the ground like Brown Park. We just spoke about the feasibility study, which has still been hidden from us. So it doesn't need to be hard. If we're just honest with our constituents about it, there'd be a lot less problems. If that happened under my watch, for example, I would just tell the public, if it's not feasible, it's not feasible. But if the feasibility study is there, why can't we just show them? I mean, these people vote us into a job only to hide the facts from them. So what I'll be bringing is all the issues we've talked about, but honesty and transparency. And I won't be answering to, the southern dictators down south. Let's have a look at our coal royalties. You've seen the billions of dollars spent in the southeast corner right now. And what do we get? Well, nothing. So what I want to do is push that strong voice of CQ and be honest and transparent with our constituents about where we're going.